Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Gosztola. I'm joined by my co-host Rania Khalek, and welcome to the Unauthorized Disclosure podcast. And we're pleased to be joined this week by Liz Oliva Fernández, who is with Belly of the Beast. It's an independent media organization or project that's focused on the U.S. and Cuba, and we'll be discussing U.S. policy toward Cuba, the U.S. government's policy. Liz is presenting or has put together two fabulous documentaries, Uphill on the Hill and Hardliner on the Hudson, which we'll be getting into. So thank you for joining us, Liz.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
And maybe begin, since we haven't had you on the show before, by introducing yourself and speaking about your work with Belly of the Beast and traveling from Cuba to the United States to bring attention to what U.S. policy is doing to Cuba.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, my name is Liz Oliva Fernández. I'm 30 years old. I work for Belly of the Beast since 2020. We start with the docu-series that the name is The War on Cuba because we want to explain the impact that the sanctions has on the real people in Cuba. Because many times when we listen to talk about the sanctions, to talk about embargo blockade, whatever you want to call it, they just say that the sanctions is affecting only the government. Is it's the main focus, like affecting the government, and that's a lie. And there's a lie that many people doesn't know. And they don't understand how the sanctions affect the people. So the war in Cuba, our first documentary, tells the stories about specific people affected by the sanctions. I'm talking about Ernesto, Dailen, Roxana, like people with a name and a face. Someone like someone from not only from the United States, but from the world can be related and feeling empathy for that person. So, but at that time, that was between 2020 and 2021, 22, we didn't have the opportunity to explain why, to explain what is behind that policy. So, but any of those answers are in Cuba because the sanctions are not like internal thing that the Cuban government is doing to the Cuban people. The sanctions are are something that are coming from outside, and this is not like any other country around the world. The sanctions are coming from the United States, one of the most powerful countries around the world. So Reed has, as a Reed Lindsay is the director of Belly of the Beast. He's a U.S. citizen. He always talk about how U.S. Western journalists coming to the South and the global South to tell stories, and they call it parachute journalists because they just jump in there and they hire a fixer, someone who can explain the things for them, and they can explain the things for the war. But they don't know the reality. They don't doesn't the most of the time they even don't understand what's going on and the cause and the background, the history behind all the things. So he's like, why we are not doing parachute journalism the other way around? Why are not taking Liz Oliva Fernandez from Cuba, who is being affected by the sanctions the whole life, her family and everything, and take it to the United States to try to discover what's going on. So we did it. It wasn't easy. It isn't easy for a Cuban to get a visa to go to the United States. Forget about a tourist visa. That's impossible. And like a job visa for that. I remember that at that time the embassy was closed and they are no working in visa. So I have to ask a visa in Cuba to go to Colombia, to ask a visa in Colombia to come back to Cuba to go to the United States. So it was a long trip, not only because the distance and the hours flying between a country from another, but also like keep preparing, setting the things in order to make it possible. And we did it in 2023. we shooting no one but two documentaries that, as you mentioned at the beginning, is Hardliner and the Hudson, uphill on the hill, that is our word there than trying to explain who is behind that policy, what they want about this policy. Um, Not only it's not focused only about the sanctions, because since a few years ago, Cuba is again the state sponsor of terrorism list. So we bring that to the table too, because most of the people doesn't understand what makes you Cuba being a list that the United States says that sponsor terrorism, and what is the effect that that list has on the Cuban people too.
I want to hear more about the analysis here. But I'm curious, given that you did get to visit the U.S., Liz, what was your impression as like a Cuban from this country that's been strangled by this, the U.S. for so long? Actually getting to, I'm sure you've seen the U.S. like in Hollywood films and on TV, but to actually visit and to have interactions and to like walk around a place like New York City. Um, what was your impression of this place? Were you surprised? Did all of the sort of stereotypes you had in your head, were they reinforced or the opposite? I'm curious about your experience and what you thought as you reflected on it.
I think that the only surprise that I had was that there is no one United States. I was expecting just only unique United States, like
Yeah.
the typical thing. And I was surprised by the fact that there are multiple United States inside of the United States. So I wasn't expecting that. And also, it's really overwhelming for me. That's the first time that I went to the United States, and this is a country with a lot of stimulations. Imagine coming to Cuba. If you have been in Cuba, you realize that we live in a bubble. We don't have advertising. Everything is calm, and you don't have any stimulation side of like people are focusing on people. No, like it's not. It's I don't know how to explain that, but it's quite different. So like being forced to speak in English 24/7. um Dealing with, I was doing journalists in a language that is not my language, um trying to get interviews with powerful people, trying to and that's important, and for me that's the main preoccupation, not the main worry that I had at that time, because as a journalist that if you are asking maybe difficult uncomfortable questions, this person, the subject, can like trying to get around your question and answer whatever they want. And I was worried because I was doing that in English, and I was worried about they use the language to dismiss my question or to dismiss my message or something. So I was really anxious about that thing. Also, it's not the same. The culture is not the same. The people doesn't respond in the same way. They don't act in the same way. The word that in Spanish may mean something in English have other context. So it was really complicated for me. And I wasn't doing a pleasing journalism. I wasn't like doing, okay, whatever you want to say, I don't care. Take the mic. Um, so that was really difficult. Also was and I was like working. We were working a lot like crazies because the visa has a time. So and only one entry. So you need to be sure that when I came back to Cuba, you have everything you need because I couldn't come back again. So it was. I think there was a lot of pressure, but also I think I feel really welcomed by the people. uh, I understand the complexities. I come back a second time to the United States for a tour. We spent more than 50 cities across the United States. So I saw a lot of the United States. And
Mm.
also, I always say, my best thing from the United States is people. because when you are watching news, for example, like because my job, I need to be like watching news. You see, sometimes you see uh like silly videos on Instagram, like all the American scenes like be silly and stupid, and that's not true. And that's not true. And the first city that shows me that there is different is Washington D.C. and U.S. street people. That when I ask questions about sanctions, about a terrorism list, they knew, and they knew a lot, and I wasn't expecting that. Okay, maybe you know about Cuba, mojitos, Fidel Castro, Baradero, regime dictatorship, whatever you want, but I wasn't expecting more than that. But people know, and people know not just about the sanctions, the people know that the sanctions is affecting. I remember a guy that say sanctions is violence, and I was, what? Because was an interview outside of Metro, and you're talking me about sanctions is violence. Who are these people? I want to know more about these people. Of course, I know that all the United States not like that. I in my opinion, in my perspective, maybe I'm wrong. A lot of this have to do because Washington D.C. is a black city, because black populations in the United States has been, they know by experience what the US government is capable to do. Um, I think they have like a biggest empathy what's going on with in Cuba and also in other countries.
I believe that's a really good way of putting it, and you do a fantastic job presenting these documentaries. And I'll say, as you know, a white American who is following you, nobody else has given me a tour of my own country to explain why U.S. policy is the way that it is toward Cuba. And so I thank you for taking the time to travel to the US to try and put a camera in the face of some of the more influential politicians in the United States who are doing this to Cuba. And as you make it clear, it goes both directions. We are being deprived, United States or Americans are being deprived access to Cuba. It's extremely difficult. They try and frighten us, as you cover in your documentary. Then, of course, there's the more glaring fact that there's a inflicted or created humanitarian crisis in Cuba that affects everyone there, like you and your family and friends. So, what if we show, as we've been saying, there are two documentaries. I want to show the Hardliner on the Hudson trailer so people can see this preview of what you've done. It's very professional. I'm very impressed by what Belly of the Beast has put together here. So let's go ahead and show this to people so they can see what we're discussing, get a flavor of this film, and then I'll get your reaction to working on this one in particular, which covers Senator Bob Menendez.
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm from Havana, Cuba, but right now I'm in Hudson County, New Jersey.
This is Union City, New Jersey.
Placid surface, there's a strain of violence, of terrorism.
There was an explosion.
¿Cómo se sintió en ese momento?
Terrifying.
No Hudson County politician is as powerful or notorious as Bob Menendez.
They run as one party. There's no dissent, like a mafia.
Si yo sé que ustedes van a venir aquí a hablar de Cuba nada más, yo no hubiera aceptado esto.
Bob Menendez is a money-making machine when it comes to fundraising.
Yo soy cubano.
Soy cubano.
Cubano.
¿Y aquí en New Jersey hay corrupción?
Donde más político corrupto hay.
Todas las noticias dicen cuál es el senador más corrupto que existe.
Breaking news, New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez has been indicted by a federal grand jury. 3 counts of conspiracy to commit bribery, extortion, and fraud.
Hola, Senador Menéndez. Mi nombre es Liz Oliva Fernández. Soy periodista independiente de Cuba.
So tell us, Liz, tell us about working on this one in particular.
Well, that was between New York and New Jersey. I And that's funny because I said that I've been forced to speak in English 24/7, but in New Jersey it's totally different. I think the language that dominates New Jersey, Union City particularly, is Spanish. I was surprised to find so many people from around the world, not just from Latin America, and in Union City. And this is one of the, you say, and you asked me a few minutes ago, how was like it uh, being like walking around New York. That was one of the things that I like the most from United States in general, but also about these cities, that they have people from around the world, and these people are bringing their cultures with them. So that's amazing. I really enjoy doing New Jersey because we have a goal. So Bob Menendez past, background, everything. So I was really, because in comparison with the other one, we are like trying to get more about by the administration, but by the administration it's more than one person. But here in New Jersey, it's just focuses on Bob Menendez. So our goal is Bob Menendez. We need to know, we need to have information about this guy. Getting interviews with these people are really tiring. Like, um, and it's funny because you will think that in a country of a freedom of speech, a journalist could get in touch with politicians easy. They answer media like questions or whatever, but they don't. But at least not in my case. And I was thinking about, okay, maybe it's because it's me. I'm a foreign journalist asking questions, but I have the privilege to talk to another journalist from New Jersey. It's like, wow, it's really, really difficult that these people will just appear on the camera and answer your questions about whatever you want to ask for. For me, it was like, what? This is not the things that are critiques to Cuba, to Cuban government. So what's going on here? Um, I really enjoy to talk to the people of New Jersey, but also to talk to the people who are pushing for a change or trying to push for a change in New Jersey and New Jersey policy. I was really surprised about the machine thing in New Jersey. I didn't know about the machine. When the first time I remember in the interview, someone told me about, oh, because a machine, and I was thinking about like it literally a machine. I was like, okay, what is a machine and how the machines works in politics. And when they explain me, it's like, no way, this is better than I was. This is better than I was thought when I was in Cuba. Um, and when I say better, and it was like it was more interesting for me as a Cuban journalist. There was more dark that it was I think. um, and there is a lot of I don't know, it's really cynical and hypocrite because when they talk about Cuba, these people has a lot of to say about democracy, about freedom of speech, about everything. They have a lot of opinions when it comes to Cuba, but you don't find that opinions about United States in general, not about New Jersey in particular. And most of the things that they critiques in Cuba, you can find them by a lot. But people doesn't know that. For example, when I was in Congress, and this is not in Holland and the Hudson, but it's part of Uphill on the Hill documentary, I discovered that but you don't have access to public health care in the United States being US citizens, like open um, public, like a free healthcare for everybody. There's always like something like a technician or something. But the members of Congress has access to healthcare for free the entire life, just for serving one period in Congress. So no discussion about say how is possible that they actually have public and free healthcare and quality healthcare for their entire life, and they don't want that for the people who put them on Congress. So, and nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about like Washington D.C. doesn't have any autonomy. That there is like they have like every decision that is going through Washington D.C. they have like going through the Congress. They don't have any autonomy. They don't have nothing, and they paid a lot of tax and contributions, and they just never come back to the DC. So it's like half a colony. So the capital of the United States of America is like a colony, and nobody's talking about that. So there is a lot of things that maybe I'm laughing not because I'm happy for that. I'm laughing because the irony, the whole thing, the way that the system works.
I thought that people who listen and watch our show would be interested to see how somebody who was in Congress handled a Cuban journalist, but also somebody who's not from here. You're a guest of the United States, and you asked to speak to him. So let's see how this former representative treated you.
I grew up in Hudson County, proud of it.
Alvio Cires was a mayor of a town in Hudson County before serving in Congress for 17 years. Then he left Congress to run for mayor again. If this sounds unusual, it's because it is.
¿Por qué está presentándose de nuevo como alcalde después de abandonar el Congreso?
Bueno, porque cuando yo me fui de aquí, yo quería terminar de hacer una biblioteca, porque la biblioteca de este pueblo está muy vieja. Y nos faltó por hacer una escuela, y quería hacer un parque en el waterfront. So, cuando yo terminé el Congreso, me embullé para terminar los proyectos que yo tenía en mente la primera vez que yo era alcalde aquí.
Nosotros nos habían comentado varias personas que usted había vuelto aquí a presentarse como alcalde porque Menéndez necesitaba el asiento en el Congreso para su hijo,
No,
¿verdad?
no, eso es tontería. Yo hubiera quedado en el Congreso, yo sacaba 77, 78% de los votos. Lo que me gustó a mí que fue Menéndez y que fue candidato, que me sustituyó, pero no hubo pacto ninguno, nada de eso.
¿Me puede decir cuáles han sido sus logros en el Congreso?
Yo siempre luché para los derechos humanos en los países como Venezuela, Nicaragua y los países que abusan de los derechos humanos.
En el caso de Cuba.
Y bueno, iba a decir en Cuba, claro, siempre me he luchado para el abuso que existe en Cuba con el pueblo de Cuba por muchos años. No solamente cuando era congresista, sino antes de ser congresista. Esta área es muy activa de la comunidad cubana.
¿Usted cree que existe una diferencia entre los cubanoamericanos, demócratas y republicanos en Cuba?
Nosotros no teníamos diferencia ninguna cuando venía a Cuba.
¿Usted cree que las sanciones ayudan al pueblo de Cuba?
Yo creo que ayudan a ponerle presión al gobierno. Creo que deben ponerle sanciones. Si tú quieres quitar las sanciones, ¿qué va a hacer Cuba para obtener eso? Si ellos no van a ceder, yo opino que las sanciones deben mantenerse. El hecho de que yo luchaba por Cuba es una cosa que yo llevo en mi corazón.
Claro.
Y Menéndez también. Como llegamos a donde llegamos, tenemos la voz para decir lo que está pasando en Cuba.
¿Cuál es la relación de ustedes dos? ¿Cómo usted lo ve a él?
Yo, como uno de mis mejores amigos, jugamos golf juntos y todo, y participamos en diferentes eventos.
¿Cómo la influencia que tuvo usted cuando estaba en el Congreso y actualmente tiene el senador Menéndez?
Porque nosotros hemos logrado que la administración hable de los derechos humanos y el abuso que hay en Cuba.
Antes no se hablaba de eso.
No, si nosotros no estamos ahí presionando al gobierno, no.
¿Qué pensó usted cuando Obama restableció la normalización entre Cuba y Estados Unidos?
El hecho de que Obama haya ido a Cuba, sí, un gesto muy bonito, pero Obama trató de su mejor lo que pudo, pero no dio ningún resultado.
Pero Cuba estaba floreciendo en ese momento. Yo estaba ahí cuando, cuando sucedió.
¿Y por qué hay tanta gente que quiere salir de Cuba? Si Cuba está floreciendo tanto, ¿por qué hay tanta gente que quiere salir de Cuba?
Pues después cuando llegó Trump y la crisis, el COVID, las sanciones, que retrocedimos. Le digo como lo vivimos del otro lado, como todo el mundo iba a Cuba, todo el mundo quería visitar, los cruceros.
Y mejoró a Cuba.
En ese momento,
mejoró al Partido Comunista, no mejoró a Cuba. El pueblo cubano no mejoró. Porque en Cuba, si tú no eres parte del Partido Comunista, tú no puedes participar en nada.
Yo no soy parte del Partido Comunista.
No, pero yo creo que nosotros no tenemos la misma posición sobre Cuba.
No, yo no digo que la misma posición a partir de las vivencias que hemos tenido diferentes. Yo estaba en ese momento de Obama, usted lo ve como lo ve aquí. Yo le estoy contando como lo veo yo.
Sí, pero yo lo que veo es que toda la pregunta tiene que ver con Cuba. Yo pensé, si yo sé que ustedes van a venir aquí a hablar de Cuba nada más, yo no hubiera aceptado esto.
Pero si usted prefiere hablar de Cuba, usted lucha por
Tú
Cuba.
eres la que está haciendo la pregunta.
Claro, pero usted tiene un rol decisivo en la política
Sí.
en el Congreso, ¿no?
La tuve, sí.
Entonces, por eso estamos hablando de Cuba, porque era su rol con su carrera
Ok, sigue la
política.
entrevista, porque si no vamos a terminar esto pronto.
¿No es eso lo que usted hacía?
Sigue la entrevista,
Discúlpeme
si no
estoy
vamos a terminar
equivocada.
esto pronto. Bueno, vamos a terminar esto, que tengo gente allá afuera esperando.
He's such an asshole. Sorry. That's just like so. All these people who want freedom and democracy and, oh, we want these countries to be how we want them to be. The second you ask them a hard question, they're like, I'm leaving. I don't agree with you. Sorry. That's amazing. What a jackass. I'll say it. You're well done. That was really well done. So calm.
Thank you. Well, I have to try to compose myself because it's difficult, because the only thing was like, he said like, no, white people are leaving. And I say, okay, they're leaving now, but at the time people were staying there.
Right.
So it's different. And also you say, no, this is just a Communist Party thing. I said, no, I was there. You don't. I was there. I'm telling you, like, my experience. The thing is, they can argue with someone who thinks different. They don't want to, because I have a lot of friends with different perspective about Cuba and many things, but we can have conversations. We can argue about something, because that's okay. This is your point of view. This is my point of view. Okay, that maybe this that I'm saying is interesting. I haven't considered that point of view, but let's talk about that, because as a Cuban, we want the best for the Cubans, right? But it's not with this. It's like you are with me or against me. There's not something like dissent. They talk about dissent in Cuba and how Cuban government react to dissent. Well, that's how U.S. politicians react to dissent.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, and so we didn't say much yet, and before we conclude the interview, I think it's important to emphasize that the first documentary we mentioned, Uphill on the Hill, is really about how Joe Biden has come into the White House and allowed everything that Donald Trump undid. You know, say what you will about President Barack Obama. I don't actually know your personal view. You're welcome to share. Some of it comes through in both of these documentaries. I think as a Cuban, you have to be fairly optimistic about what his administration was trying to do to specifically open up a relationship between the U.S. and Cuba, so that no longer was there this embargo or blockade. And so you have in this Uphill on the Hill an exploration, an examination of why Joe Biden hasn't done anything to undo Donald Trump destroying the openness, the free exchange of people between U.S. and Cuba that Obama was trying to kickstart.
You tell me that, and I was thinking about the moment that when Gonzalez said, like, I think was working with the Biden administration at that time, like, Biden administration is not Obama. Biden is not Obama, who is waiting, like, this change in policy. They're wasting their time. That's clear. Biden is not Obama. And I think that and when I say us as a Cuban, we thought, okay, this guy was part of Obama administration. He was there when Obama and Raul Castro normalized relation between both countries. His wife spent time in Cuba as a part of the delegation, so he knows better. He's going to do it better, but he don't. I've seen so far nothing has been changed. Why? Well, many people say that Menendez, and I will add, okay, that Menendez maybe is the biggest single reason but also it's excuse. It's easy to say, okay, no, because we need polls, we need divided Congress, we need Democrats maintain together. But this is bullshit. In the same, like, if he wants to do like just something simple with the state sponsor of terrorism list, he can do it. He doesn't need the Congress for that. He can do it. And it's something that takes nothing in question of time, in terms of time. And he's not doing nothing. Why? Well, I think this is not the only question that he needs to answer, like what is going on with Gaza. So it's, for me, when you, like in Cuba, when people have like a really specific image about the United States, when the United States is, because the media, because they control the media outlet, they control the social medias too. They have specific programs who are designed to fill the feed of Cuban people in Cuba with the content that they want us to see or to watch. So when you come to Cuba and come back, that this is not something usual, because most of them are forced to stay there because they can't travel back and forth, because there is no normal relation between both countries. People ask, okay, because they have they have democracy, freedom of speech, and everything. And when it's plain that millions of people are doing demonstrations trying to end the war, the genocide in Gaza, they say like, yeah, but why the government is not listening to them? And asking the same with Cuba, why the government, the US government, is not listening to not the people in Cuba who actually live in Cuba, but the most of the people in the United States that want to end the sanctions and also to take Cuba out of the terrorism list, because it doesn't have any sense for me. Why? So I'm not the one who needs to answer that. I think something that the whole system in the United States have to answer to the U.S. citizens. Why are not listen to the people of the United States?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Maybe America needs a little bit of regime change, honestly. I'm curious, can you, before we wrap up here, I'd like to know, like, what's the situation in Cuba right now? I know, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's really sad. And it's really frustrating for me because I always say I lost my entire community, and because they are young people, they want to opportunities, and we don't have opportunities in Cuba anymore. We have one of the best healthcare systems in the world, but we don't have raw materials, instruments. We don't have nothing. So what are you doing in a country like that? What are you doing in a contest like that? How do you save a contest like in a country for a situation like that? I don't know. I think like the most of the people are focusing in surviving day by day. There is a lot of hopeless in the whole thing because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. This is not something that is coming because it doesn't depend on us. It's not. So how you fix it? You can't. So everybody's waiting what is happening in United States the next November. What is happening with the elections? Who is gonna win? Is Biden finally do something about Cuba or is not? Who is going? Is Biden having a second term or is not? So what's going on? What is going to happen in your country and how that thing is going to affect in mine? That's the entire thing we're waiting. And that's really that's not the kind of future that I want for Cuba. I think that we have been fight a lot in order to have sovereignty. We have autodetermination. So waiting for something to happen in order to see how it's going to affect us is terrible. And it's terrible for us who actually are used to like it take care of our own destiny.
I think that's something that everybody should be thinking about. And I don't think that a lot of people in the United States do appreciate how much US policy affects Cuba, but also, a lot of other countries that do not have the self-determination or they're robbed of their sovereignty to make their own choices. So as we conclude, can you tell people what you'd like them to do to support this work, this project, and where they can find these documentaries, where they will be if people want to watch them?
Of course. It's pretty easy. You just need to subscribe and follow Belly of the Beast Cuba in all the platforms. YouTube, X, Instagram. We are just starting in TikTok now. Um, because it's difficult for us to try to visualize these questions because type in your search Cuba, there are going a lot of contents about hungry, misery, dictatorship, regime, blah 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 blah. But there is not positive stories about my own country, and Q is beyond of that. If you know better, but that's the kind of things that they want to portray us as a failed state. That they want to portray us as a failed society, and it's not. So that's why you can find contents about medical brigades in Cuba, about Cuba doing solidarity around the world, about people in Cuba being resilient, being tough, being badass. You couldn't find that stories in the mainstream media outlets in the United States. And that's the kind of stories that Belly of the Beast Cuba are interesting to cover and also interesting to show the world. That's more than Cuba that the mainstream media outlets want you to know. And also the premiere of the documentaries. I'm so sorry, I will forget that. May 13 and May 20. May 13, Hardliner and the Hudson. That's the first day of the trial against Menendez. So it's going to be trending topic. May 20th is Uphill on the Hill.
Well, thank you so much, Liz, for taking the time to join us. And if you didn't get it from watching this conversation with us, you should definitely make a point of watching the documentaries because they're well worth your time.
Yeah, for sure.
For full uncut episodes of the Unauthorized Disclosure podcast, go to patreon.com/unauthorized disclosure or go to thedissenter.org and become a subscriber.